Okay, well, we're going to jump into our training here. So if you recall, we talked about looking at a training around services across the lifespan, the life map training regarding the individuals that we serve. One of the things I've been sharing in presentations that I've been a part of with different places I've gone is what makes us pretty unique for the services that we offer is they really do spread across the lifespan. If you look at other social service organizations, it may touch at certain points in a person's life, but when we talk about an individual that lives or that has a developmental disability, that can mean from the time they're born to the time they die, that at some point there's some touch point with them. But certainly the other thing I'm sharing is the fact that we have a real responsibility to support individuals to become as independent as they possibly can, to support families in that effort. And so what we thought we would do tonight is we've got 4 presenters. So Kimberly's going to start us off tonight, and then we're going to go to Jay, Jessica, and Sharon. And what they're going to do is just try and take us kind of along this road, along this path, using some different examples of some of the individuals that we serve, where maybe we are as an agency pretty highly involved and maybe highly involved throughout that person's life, or like we've talked about, maybe just touching at certain points in that individual's life, and then be able to share. But we really want to keep it pretty informal. I'm committed to trying to get you out of here in an hour, so we definitely want to respect your guys' time. But as you guys have questions or as things come up, this is pretty informal. I'm sure they'll we can chime in and do that. We'll be kind of working a little bit through the book that's in front of you a little bit. As some examples. So I think we're ready to get started. So Kimberly is the lead-off hitter.
Okay. So David, are you putting slide?
I can turn.
Just touch the screen.
Oh, wow.
If you got your back down,
So you really can't-
down the bottom.
Yes, you can.
I know,
It's just like an iPad. It's like a big old iPad. Oh,
Wow.
it's very sensitive.
Stop it.
Correct. So what Dan just said, when you move your hand near it, it has sensors that picks up, so you really don't even have to touch it. I'm just being honest, that's what it's got.
If I don't hold the pen,
I mean, try it, let's see how close you can get.
I don't know if ours is turned on yet. So, hand gestures.
Well, she just did.
no,
No, Dave.
David is next.
No, turn it back.
Oh.
Dave's playing with you.
Isn't that nice?
Revenge. Okay. All right. So for EI, I've got 3 little kiddos to talk about. So this is our first little girl. Her name is Alex, and she was actually she holds kind of a special place in my heart. She was actually the first little girl that I saw that I had on my caseload when I started in early intervention a long time ago. We won't say how old she is. So we started seeing Alex when she was about 2 months old. She had multiple diagnoses. She had seizures, she was blind, she was missing her corpus callosum, which is the kind of divider between the hemispheres. She had a full multidisciplinary team. I'm looking at this. We could do the wrong slides, but that's okay, we'll go with this. So she had PT, OT, speech, she had me, I was the early intervention specialist, and a service coordinator. So she had everybody. And then we also brought in Cincinnati Association for the Blind. So we collaborated with multi-systems during her entire time with us because that's what the family needed for support. So that's what we gave her. She then transitioned out of early intervention into public school. So she went to preschool at West Vermont, I believe, and with an IEP. And this is probably an individual that Dee Dee is going to service the rest of her life. I mean, she's got significant needs. So you probably will hear about her a little bit later from a couple other folks. And this is Trent. Love this kid. Love this kid. Oh my God, he's so awesome. We started to see him at about 2 months of age as well. We got him, the referral came from Children's Hospital. He had a diagnosis of Apert syndrome, which I had never heard of before, and I've never heard of one since. So we also full disciplinary team, multidisciplinary, OT, PT, speech. As you can see, he had a trach during the entire time that we saw him. So he had in-home nursing care, multiple surgeries at Children's Hospital. Family was amazing, just amazing. Just, I can't say enough awesome things about Trent. His little spirit was phenomenal. And he went to preschool with an IEP, so collaborated with a ton of folks for him, but he's doing great. I mean, really, really great. He is now in kindergarten and not needing us right now. Will he need us down the road? Maybe, but maybe not. But we front-loaded that kid with a ton of services. And so he will probably just use the supports that he has in his community for the rest of his life, but we're here if he needs us. Okay. Next little guy is Levi. Levi, we got him at age 22 months. He was drug exposed, not addicted, so going along, he was pretty okay for the first year or so. And then ended up with a speech delay, which is not uncommon. We only provided him with the speech therapist.
Foster home or?
He was in foster. He was in a foster home. Biological parents were really hard to engage. That is one of the rules that we live by. We have to try really hard to engage the biological family. We have to get permission from them if we can find them. We have even sent paperwork to prisons in order to get parents to sign permission for us to serve their kids. But he did really, really well, and he met all of his milestones, all of his outcomes, and we exited him prior to the age of 3. We collaborated a ton with all of the different agencies, DJFS, daycare, school district, and he's probably not a kiddo that we are ever going to serve again. And so that's kind of the gamut. So Alex, tons and tons of services and probably all of her life. Trent, tons and tons of services, and now probably not so much, maybe, but probably not. And then Levi, some service, and then now none at all. He got what he needed from us, and now he's fine. So that's our road to. Okay. Now we're down to school days.
Okay.
Are you going to write on the thing? I didn't write.
Okay. Sorry. So I know some of you are parents and you have special needs kids, so you kind of know kind of the road, where the road goes. And while we have a school here, that is a 1% population. It is the most intensive population, and I describe it to families that special education services is an inverted triangle. Up here is where everybody is supposed to be, and you really have to kind of go down through the continuum, down through that triangle, and we're at the very bottom. The only thing that is below us would be home-based services, you know, our hospital. So we're kind of like the last stop for a lot of individuals. So there's a couple of things that guide where kids get their services. One of the keys is that Claremont DD is ultimately not responsible for providing them with services. Their local school districts are. And that's part of the free appropriate public education. And then we also want to try to put people in least restrictive environments. So, so during school age, we might not see these individuals. And there are some specialized programs where we do kind of help some people along the way. But there's a lot of people that probably have gone through early intervention, and we might not see them until their 20s or as they're transitioning into adulthood. So we're going to go, one of the other things that's available to kids, of course, local school districts are responsible for providing their education. They do pay 100% of the cost for the kids to come here, which includes transportation, nurses, and also one-on-one aides. And to give you an idea, we have 9 kids coming this year with nurses out of 45. So that's a pretty high percentage of kids. And these are kids that probably would have never left home. So we really are working, getting kids out of their home who have been getting nursing services as far as like itinerant type services or something like that. So there are a couple other options for children as far as education. They could also take something called the John Peterson Scholarship, which is available to anybody with a developmental disability. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of providers for the John Peterson Scholarship, and the same thing goes for the autism scholarship. So they can go to the regular school or those schools, or look for specialized programs. And I really collaborate with the local school districts in Claremont County, and they contact us when they have a student that they can't provide services for.
Excuse me, what age would they typically start here then?
We do not do any preschool. So I do take students that are age 5, which is kindergarten, age 5 on to 22.
Okay, and EI was birth to?
3.
So we don't have any kids
there's
from
sort of a
3 to
gap.
5.
Yeah, there is a gap.
But the local school districts do a really
Right.
nice job of serving those kids for the most part. There are some kids that, I've got a little girl right now that she has chosen not to go to preschool because her involvement is so significant. She's so medically fragile that she will not get anything from the local preschool, even though it is preschool special ed. She's waiting until she's 5 so she can come
And
to
I
Jay's program.
just talked to New Richmond, they have another student that can't go to a school-based preschool because of a lot of different things that are going on there, but is very interested in possibly come to our program. You know, so there is kind of like a little bit of a gap, but that gap is good because what it does is it really puts kids in their home school districts with an integrated population of some typical kids, and there's some good modeling that goes on. So
Yeah.
kids learn from other kids.
Because the preschool, and I will say this,
Go
the
ahead.
preschool programs in the local school districts, they have typical kids and then they have the kids that have the IEPs. So
My son was there as
a
the,
typical,
Typical.
no, as one with an IEP, and my daughter went as a typical.
as a typical.
And so she was there
Yeah.
with him for a certain period of time, but they asked us, will you have Gabby go here, because we think it would be good.
Yeah. It's a
That's
great
what we
program. I taught
Great.
special ed for 10 years, and it's a great way of doing it. We had, when I taught here, right out of college, we had a waiting list for families that wanted to be the typicals. Right. So. pretty cool.
Do you integrate or work with those schools at all on any training for the, not necessarily preschool, they seem, but like for the elementary school ages, or is that different people?
Okay.
Like, would you ever partner with any of the special ed teachers at the local schools?
You know,
To
me
be fair.
personally, I'm involved in a lot of different committees, and school districts sometimes call me to collaborate. I mean, I want to say that everybody in Claremont County works really, really well together, and people know who has expertise in different things. You know, so, I mean, I get phone calls all the time from somebody, and they're like, hey, you know, we're really having this problem. You know, would you kind of maybe come out and just kind of like look and kind of give us some advice? Absolutely. I'm really involved in the whole the Regional Autism Advisory Council. So we do a lot of training with other teachers from all over Claremont County. So I think everybody in our agency is always available to help wherever needed. And it is hard. It's hard to reach. The special ed teachers, they get a lot of the stuff. Where we really have problems is trying to get to the general ed teachers. You know, I mean, those are the people that really kind of struggle. And there's so much on their plate to begin with. So you have these kids who have special needs that are going into typical classrooms. And it's just, you know, you lose that specialty, you know. And so it is, it's really hard. So, but I think in Claremont County, I think everybody tries to do a really good job with special education. You want to push my slide? I only have one other slide. David, you sleeping?
Can we do that?
Oh, yeah, please.
I thought you could do it, Jay.
Oh, I could. She's a great
Don't be afraid to try.
You're touching the wrong place.
I haven't done it yet. So we're going to continue on the life map of Alex. And so this was Alex today. I just went down to the classroom and took a picture of her. I should know how old she is. She is over 18. But, huh?
19.
19, thank you, yeah. How do you know so much? I'm terrible at knowing ages. They're little kids. Yeah, you remember. Yeah, so she's 19, and Alex has some pretty significant needs. And as she's gotten older, her seizures have gotten more intensive. You know, she has a family who's been fairly aggressive. You know, they've had lots of physical therapy, lots of speech. You know, she has an audiologist that's involved. She has a lot of children's hospital doctors that are involved, you know, a whole team, and even talking about collaboration. Our PT will collaborate with Dr. Kennedy, different people at Children's Hospital, because we kind of know the kids really, really well, so we're able to really advocate for the parents. Sometimes we even go to appointments with them. I'm going to an appointment with a father who kind of isn't understanding things. So the path for Alex has been a lot of therapy, you know, a lot of interventions to try to keep her as strong as she possibly can, you know. And if you've known anybody who has like cerebral palsy or whatever, if you don't do a lot of stretching, things like that, they'll tend to like really draw in. And so we've kept her able to, you know, use her hands and her legs and stuff like that a little bit. So Alex is a real hard worker. So we are starting to talk about what's next for Alex. And one of the things, Alex started off with what was called a home health care waiver. And that was to kind of help provide services in her home. And then the home health care waiver transitioned into the transitional developmental disability waiver. So that was a big change for the family, and now it's transitioning again into the IO waiver. And so she continues to have at-home help to help keep her at home and keep her safe, and to really work on that development. You know, during the summer they spend a lot of time in their pool and things like that. So we're looking at programs for Alex right now, and you know, her family would like to have something that is going to be stimulating, that is engaging, that still provides her, you know, with a lot of that physical therapy, even if it's not by a physical therapist, it's somebody that would do stretching, put her in a stander, and so that she doesn't lose the progress that she's made. And so I'm starting to work right now, talking about transitions. You know, we're starting to look at what type of day programs might be out there and might be available to her, you know, and would meet her needs. So that is something that we kind of start talking about, since the kids can stay in school until they're 22, really kind of once they've turned 18, we start having those conversations. 2 years out, we're really starting to look at places, and then the last year, we're really starting to finalize plans and decide what that transition is going to look like. So, look and see what else I had. At age 14, and you can switch to the next slide. I'm just kind of going back. I only hit the one slide. But age 14, that's when we're supposed to really be building transition plans in the schools. And that's for any child who has a disability. Because if you think about it, that's probably like 8th grade, 9th grade. You don't want to decide that you want to be a vet tech, and then you get to be a senior in high school and find out, well, you know what, I probably needed to take biology, and maybe I needed to take this other class. So the whole idea with transition planning is what kind of activities do you need to do in order to do that. Might be shadowing, going to a veterinarian's office or whatever, because some people don't realize that vet techs, sometimes they have to clean out the cages, they have to clean up, you know, the waste and different things like that. So the transition planning really begins with kids as early as age 14. And then it really kind of intensifies as they get older. After 12th grade, a decision is made with families to defer their diploma. They've actually met all the high school requirements, and they can defer their diploma. And one of the things that I look at and other people look at is, what do you hope to achieve by continuing to go to school over the next couple of years? You know, it could be working on vocational training, it could be working on still developing some of those social and maybe functional life skills. But you need to have a goal as to why you want to stay in school until you're 22. And that has kind of shifted a little bit. Before, a lot of people seemed to think that it was just kind of like an entitlement. I can stay until I turn 22, but we're starting to have more discussions about what do you hope to achieve? What is your goals? And I've actually had some students that have stopped making progress, and some of them are actually showing regression. And, you know, we're having to have some tough conversations that, you know what, you're taking up a spot that somebody else could be taking. You know, it's not respite. You know, we can't provide you respite during the day. So that becomes a little bit harder. So we kind of help families with that. A lot of things come along with turning 18. You know, we'll help with guardianship, connecting with other services like getting their Social Security, getting Medicaid, things like that. So what all do you need to prepare you for adult life? And I would imagine the philosophy is to try to keep kids in the home as long as possible. What does the family need to support them in their home? So that's pretty much all I had. I did not want to bog you down with a lot of details.
So in the school program, with someone like Alex that has a lot of medical needs as well, what's their day like when they're here with you?
With us?
Yeah, what kind of classes do they have, or what does it, because it sounds like she still needs a lot of therapy and
She does,
stuff
she
during
does.
that time.
Yeah,
so.
she has a very, very scheduled day. You know, she uses a stander, does a lot of stretching. There's a mat table where they stretch her out, they'll put her over a peanut ball. So a lot of physical activity with that. She does have a one-on-one aide that has to monitor all the time because of the seizures. Actually, this week we just got done doing some training on the bus, you know, in case she would have a seizure and what to do just to and from school. Feeding is a big issue. It takes a long time to feed because she doesn't want to swallow necessarily. And then we also have a sensory room in adult services, so the kids are scheduled to go there. We've got the swimming pool. Alex goes swimming twice a week. They've got the gym where they go to. And then they also will work on some, we call them like kind of like functional academic type skills that all of the classrooms all have like a morning meeting or a morning group, and they are able to participate by using like Big Mac switches, you know, where they will push it and it has a pre-recorded message. We read weekly readers. We get like Time magazines for the kids. So in a lot of ways, we try to make it like a regular school. And so there are some curriculum things coming into that day. My key word is engagement. I like to walk into the classroom and see everybody having some type of engagement.
Right.
They're doing some type of meaningful activity. We use a lot of iPad, and that is one of the things like Carla, who was here, you know, she does a lot of scanning software right now where she's asking questions, and even for the student who might not be able to answer questions, they might have like a switch, and it'll kind of go, you know, do you want the horse or do you want the cow? And then they'll tap it, you know, when this green ball goes to the cow. And so they're able to answer that. So we use a lot of technology to help them participate in the curriculum. So,
Are they on IEPs until they graduate?
yes, yes, yeah. Anything else? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to pick up where she left off with transition, but I'm going to talk a little bit about our transition program with the local school districts. So if students want to know more about work and engagement skills, we have a Bridges to Transition program. And that serves kids from 14 to 22. They are referred by their school system, so most of the time it's their teachers. And we have relationships with most of the local schools, all of them, but we go into most of the local school districts to provide this service. Right now, I say right now because it's always changing with this program, we are offering personal adjustment, and so we have a couple of staff that go into the school throughout the year and help students learn some job skills and job readiness type stuff, like what does it mean to meet somebody for the first time and having that good firm handshake and a warm hello. In the summertime, those same students might do some further education at our sites. We refer to that as the career exploration part of this. Then there's also the summer work experience for the students who are a little bit older, and they are typically working like an enclave where there's 5 or 6 of them that go out with the staff. I think they have 3 or 4 different work sites that they'll work at for a couple weeks each, depending on their desire to do so. It's a really cool program. And they get paid minimum wage for those jobs. And then, once they are to the last 2 years of high school, like Jay was saying, we really focus on job development and getting these guys into jobs where it might be their, first real job for getting out of school, or even a job for the summer. This summer we had somebody employed at Kings Island through the summer, which was cool. So.
And do you have job coaches with that too? How do you help them to be successful?
Yeah. So with the job development, typically we would have a job coach with them for the first part at least. And then the team would kind of decide, including someone from OOD, when that would fade away. Other schools do kind of have their own programs that are similar. And there's a lot of initiatives in the state right now where they're pushing for all people to work, including those with disabilities. So, as Jay mentioned, they're talking about work starting at age 14 in the IEPs.
What about all of the, I love questions.
Yeah.
I don't
have a
know,
whole ton.
all of the, we're so I can pepper you. What about, so I know NKU and UC and Wright State, are all exploring broader options for college for kids with disabilities, whereas that's still pretty new. Are there sort of college readiness programs or something that's, or have you gone there yet? Or
I heard, for some reason, I feel like Xavier was running a little mini program this summer. I kind of feel like I heard that, and UC has the TAP program.
Yeah.
And so I think the universities are starting to recognize that they need to provide those services. And as I recall, I believe the TAP program is almost like full tuition. It's very expensive, but you don't get credits.
Yes, I do know it's full tuition because I've heard of people going back to work because they're like, I was not saving for college for this child, so I'm back and working full time so they can go to TAP.
Right.
You don't get credits.
No.
Yeah, I don't think they get credits.
You get like an honorary degree or so. At NKU, you don't get a full degree. I guess.
Right, but I think that the university, and there's a number of groups that are working on that the universities are recognizing that. And especially with the autism population, there is a very high functioning autism group of kids that they just need the supports.
A little something, but.
Right, exactly. So I think the universities are all looking towards that. But I feel like I saw like a little mini camp for kids at Xavier this summer who wanted to go to college. I don't know if like a 2-week or
We
3
probably
weeks.
got that email. I think Janet.
I will say, the ones that say autism, I kind of go,
Yeah.
I gotcha.
But they have taken an interest in doing some of the summer stuff even before they get there. So, maybe it's a, up and coming need. That's not something we have done. I think we're assuming that in the IEP, they're getting that kind of education through the schools.
Are you working with Project Search? Explore that?
Dan might be able to speak to that.
Yeah, we haven't done a lot with Project Search because this model of Bridges is kind of fits that a little bit on our end of this deal. I know that, but we've had people that have come through Project Search that then go on to our community employment team has worked with to get a job. So So we've seen that happen. And what's interesting is we get a lot of, we'll see kids that have gone through that in Hamilton County, and then they'll move over here, or, so we do have some connections there. We just don't have like a real.
Back to Jay, we do a project search at Xavier. That's why I don't know about if Xavier's doing that exploration or not.
I think it was Xavier, I might have been UC, I think it was Xavier.
Something else.
And it might have been through a different group or something like that.
I have it in my email.
Yeah, at Claremont County, there was a program called Get Real, which is kind of like a step down from Project Surge, because Project Surge has pretty, different parameters around it, and sometimes, like the families, I think transportation was, they have to be able to travel independently, and sometimes that's a barrier, for some of the families that they don't want their child to do that. And as she said, some of the schools are doing an excellent job. I think Milford has, some good work programs that they're working on, and I think West Claremont, they have like the Aspire Academy, where they go out and work in the community. So they're bigger school districts, so they're able to build their own, but some of the smaller school districts, I think they struggle. And I do believe that like West Claremont will take other kids from other school districts into their Aspire programs.
Good for ads.
Right, yeah.
The autistic kids, that's our other challenge, that we have parents that are pushing them through public schools to get them to graduate, and then they want to do training, and then it's like, well, we can't, your child's graduated now, and it goes into a different category.
Right.
And they want, they're used to having this holistic approach, and they got a diploma now, technically they've graduated, and they can't access those support systems. And no
There
one's
is a whole-
really figured it out. Parents are so focused on, I want my kid to graduate. Okay.
But that ends that chapter once you.
And then they're like, well, okay, now I want to do this. Well, you can't go back past that threshold. I assume they're coming to do it, and then they don't know what else to do.
I think Sharon can talk about that.
Yeah, there is a hole. I
Yeah.
mean, as to what happens
Sure.
between school and work, so.
And that's why we're trying so desperately to try and, do these
Catch these
programs where we
kids.
can get into the schools, because there has been, that's a big goal of ours. we've got to make those connections sooner, because we do find situations where kids have fallen through cracks, and then, it's one
They
of
show up
those
at 22
Yeah.
wanting some kind of day program, and it's like, wow, we're in bed.
things. Yeah.
And Dan's making inroads, so you all know. I don't remember sharing that kind of RES. So,
Oh.
that's been good for you to come.
Oh, hey,
Start
that's
building
a, I'll tell you,
relationships.
that's a definitely.
Because it's going to be more on their
Yeah.
radar.
All right. So that kind of brings us into adulthood. And I asked the question, but I don't remember if you answered me or not. Is this coming from the waiver regs?
No. This is just the state initiative, Employment
Okay.
First, kind of for paths to employment.
Okay.
You kind of, and really, as we look at planning, these are the kinds of things that, especially for SSAs, to be looking at these questions as far as kind of where is the person on the path. And so these are kind of those paths.
So, with Employment First initiative, obviously, we think everyone's capable of working, and it's just a matter of where you are on that path. And so there's 4 different kind of steps to the path, or tiers to the path. There's either, I have a job, but I want a better job, or I want to move up in my job and I need some help. I want a job, I don't have one, and I need some help finding one. I'm not sure about work, and I want to learn more. Or I don't think I want to work, but maybe I just don't know enough. So I'm going to talk about what we do in adult services related to these paths. So if the individual has a job and wants a better job, or wants to move up, or if they want a job and needs help, we partner with the OD, and we also do it independently to provide services to people that want that job. There's also other providers, but right now, we're probably the biggest in the county. We don't have the capacity. So what we do in employment services, we can do that job development, which is getting with the individual, saying what they want to do, what their skills are, and trying to see if there's an employer out there that kind of matches up with. Then we go into the job placement, which is connecting the two and making that happen. The job coaching, which is what you were asking about earlier. Yeah, so once that job is secured, we send that job coach in with them, and that's really dependent on the individual, how much they'll be there. You know, lots of our folks require them to be there the entire time, you know, at least the first couple weeks. That's not true for everybody. But then typically, you know, job coaching can last a while, and that's, the whole team is making that decision, including OOD. So, you know, they're funding it, so they're having some say on that too. And then once they feel like they're successful in the job and job coaching has ended, Clermont County provides job follow-along. And so they have a job coach and program manager that kind of just checks in on them. They troubleshoot if there's any problems, and continue to have a kind of a plan with us to kind of check in with your goals. So sometimes, you know, you think everything's going good, and then they go and check on them, and it's like, whoa, what happened? So that's a good service.
Who is the job follow-along exactly?
So we have, some of the job coaches do some of that, and then we have a program manager that's dedicated to that group.
Okay.
So that's like it's kind of like a service and support administrator, but it's just for that group.
Kind of like an SSA, but
Yes.
just for that group, okay.
So the next group is if an individual wants to work, they're not sure about work, and they want more to know more about work. There might be a couple of options for this. You know, they might be open with community employment, but if that's not really what they want to do yet, we might offer them the opportunity to work on an enclave, where it is those small groups with a staff that goes out with them. They work in the community alongside other people, but they do work in a small group, so it's not fully integrated. It's, you know, in groups of 4 to 6. Currently, they're based out of the DAC building. That's where they're transported to, and then they go from there. Most of these individuals are making sub-minimum wage right now, but we're working on that. So.
And how's that decided? How's their wage decided?
So, I think the ones who aren't, there's one enclave where it's rated a piece rate, so the job is.
Got it. Get 10 digits, make 10
Yes.
digits. Got it.
There's another where they do a wage survey, and then they determine the amount of pay they would make based on how quickly they do a room compared to a typical employee. That's at the hotel. And then there are some that actually make minimum wage or higher.
Yeah, we just had a new, if I can chime in, there's a new enclave at American Micro that is fully minimum wage. And so what we're trying to do is move away from that process and get to a place where we can just, and actually there was an individual that was hired on by that company through the enclave. So that's really where we're headed. We want to get away
It
from
would be an ultimate goal.
Yes.
You're kind of interning with them, and then they get hired.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to look at ways that we can do more of almost like you would see a personnel service, you know, where, because you see a lot of these temp agencies, companies work with them, and then they bring them on for a while, then they hire them from that. A lot of methods go in that direction, so we really want to try and focus our efforts on that and get away from some of the older style stuff that we've had around, but it's just transitioning all that.
What do the companies say, this might be totally off topic, watching your time, sorry, about hiring individuals with DD? Like, are some companies hesitant at first but come on board? Are they generally, I mean, how do you find new companies if you want to do a new enclave?
It runs the gamut, yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we have a lot of connections and resources that we use. You know, there are some cold calls that happens. We have we have 2 job placement specialists who do some job developing and that type of thing. And so they make some connections in the community that we're able to use for not only those jobs, but sometimes for these as well. Actually, the job that he's talking about, we were doing a lot of contract work for them. And that actually came out of a relationship from, somebody who worked for adult services. Their son-in-law was working for that company as well, so if you have any of those connections, let me know. But then they were like, hey, why don't you just come over here and do it? And because we need you, so we like things when they happen like that, but I mean, a lot of cool calls happen too.
Sure, yeah, and in terms of what your question about, I mean, I think what we don't want is it being seen as some type of charity situation. I mean, we want
Right.
people to be seeing the skills, and that was what American Micro recognized right away. I mean, they must have been having a very difficult time. I shouldn't probably be naming the company. We're not going to tell you where they are, but they were having a difficult time.
Yes, we are.
Oh, yeah.
Broadcast
Sorry.
it everywhere.
But they were having, I think they were having a difficult time because a lot of that labor was, either irresponsible,
Not consistent.
not reliable, and these guys, I mean, they are there, and I mean, the work that they do is so much, it takes a ton of attention to detail. And I mean, and I'm not saying, I mean, these guys just do it. I mean, they were doing it, and it was like, we're hiring this guy right now because he's just, so it's just a matter of finding those right relationships, but what we don't want is, charity situation. I mean, we just don't
Right.
want to do that.
Right.
We know that, it's a situation that, and we've got a lot of employers that do recognize that, and a lot of good connections, so, but it's still a work in progress. I mean, it's going to take a while, so.
Yeah. And I mean, there are still companies that we walk into and they still see us as a charity case, or it's just a no, we don't need those people. And that's like, oh, okay, let me regroup and,
But aren't there some companies though that they're making that their mission, that
Oh,
they
absolutely.
are, I mean, that they've signed on nationwide, that they want to hire people with
Absolutely.
disabilities and stuff.
Mhm.
So, we also have the sheltered employment at the Donald Lake Economic Center. This is a piece rate right now, and we are currently offering the service to those who reside at SRDC or have no other funding. The enclaves, we're still serving people that have waivers at this time, just because nobody else really who's doing it prevalently in the county. That's what I just said. So Goodwill is doing it on a small scale. They have 4 or 5 people at one of their sites that does it now, because they are taking people from Claremont to them.
So did you say Goodwill doesn't take people on an IO waiver?
They do. I'm sorry, I went really fast. They are currently providing one enclave opportunity at one of their stores for individuals from Claremont County. But it's for 4 or 5 people, I can't remember. Do you remember how many people?
I think it's that number, yeah.
So-
But they also provide
The
the
day.
services at the Crane location, so, so that's where a lot of individuals are going to.
Oh, okay, so the stores are different from
Yes.
Reading.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, like an actual Goodwill store. We have
Right.
4 or 5 people that are served by Sharon's department that are actually working at the store in an enclave type center. So if an individual doesn't think they want to work, then maybe they need more information. We have community integration, leisure-based programs both here and at DAC. They're focused on helping individuals lead lives worth living and giving them the opportunity to explore their communities as well as their work skills. And then, I was like, who's going to talk about retirement and aging? So there are a lot of people that retire and they go to the leisure program. So you can talk about aging all day long. And again, the day services is only offered to those people who have no funding or are at SES. Oh, no. And like you were talking about Goodwill's another provider of day services, there are quite a few other providers in the county now because we've helped that happen. So lots of other opportunities for people who have workers. Any other questions?
Is this actually what parents get to look at to kind of see what the life map is? Is that what this is supposed to be?
We can share that with them, yeah, and I don't know, I know we've got a bunch of them out there, so.
I've given them out to all of my parents during their IEP meeting.
Okay.
And then I've given several out to the school districts.
And we're starting to put them in our intake packets, just so we can start that conversation early.
Okay, well, wrapping it up here. I think the three previous presenters have pretty much taken you along the map here. And thank you, Jessica, for including retirement and aging. So, since community support service doesn't really have a stopping point, I'm going to kind of take a different route, so to speak. So we're going to be traveling on the life map with the community support service and, you know, talking about some of the things, what do individuals and families encounter as they make the journey from birth to the end of life, and what are the ways that they interface with the different tasks and responsibilities that the community support service division kind of takes care of for our agency. So I'm going to give you some examples and ask questions as we're going along because it's kind of like very brief. So we've got our vehicle on the road here, and so what am I going to need for my journey? Well, usually when we have a car, we need a license in order to get somewhere. So in our agency, we have the eligibility process to know whether you get services from us or not, and that's through our intake division. And so at age 6 and age 16, there is a tool that our staff uses to decide if people are eligible for services or not. So that's the license in order to be on the life map. And then we also usually have to have a road map or a GPS. And that's all the rules from the Department of Developmental Disabilities that we are, you know, accountable for. And I think when I last looked at it, there's about 8 pages of them. I mean, not just 8 pages of a rule, but 8 pages of a variety of rules. That's just the topics of them. So, you know, it gets pretty intense just with all the compliance components and, you know, doing planning and services in order to stay within the roadmap and not get lost along the way. Then we have our insurance, which I relate to the kind of services we have in our department that are kind of ongoing. You know, they're, you know, once you have a waiver, you know, they're kind of a lifetime thing, so you've kind of got the insurance that you're going to be taken care of. Fortunately, at this time, that's the same case for our locally funded supported living and individual budget. Usually, once a person gets off the waiting list and gets that services, they continue to receive it year after year after year. If you have any questions about any of those services, I can address those, but you know, we talk about those throughout the year, and especially we will be at our strategic planning as we go forward. Then your car needs some routine maintenance, and I call that our alternative options. That's when, you know, things with your vehicle are going pretty good, but that's because periodically you kind of review it and say, you know, maybe I need this or that and the other thing. So as you remember, our alternative options are local funds that each year we set aside a portion of our budget, and people call with what they need now. So, you know, if my routine maintenance, I need windshield wipers, you know, whatever. You know, maybe they need specialized support or medical transportation. So that's what we use funds to kind of just cover those things that are just kind of needed at some point in time but aren't going to be ongoing, and we just allocate a certain amount of money. Sometimes, though, we do have major vehicle repairs, something big of a breakdown. So we do have some funding, which we call stabilization, and we set up plans where, for like a period of 90 days, sometimes it can go a little bit longer. But the intent is there's some crisis within the family that is going to be short-term. So we'll go in and we'll help with some funding and then also plan on how at some point in time we can, move on to not having to use our resources for that particular issue, and we can move them on to something else. So then we have our road conditions, and I equated traffic jam to our waiting list. And so, enough said about that. And if we have inclement weather, well, that's when we might have to engage our behavior support or our site services to kind of help, with things, getting, things are a little bit dangerous sometimes, and we need some behavior support to kind of go in with some strategies, and also our site contract, they go in and offer advice to families. We may see a sign that says there's an accident ahead, or we may observe an accident ahead, and that's when we think we better get our high-risk team together and say, something's going to be happening here if we don't kind of consult on this and see how we can put some things together to help families out or individuals out. I mentioned if there might be a construction zone, and that's our fast track services where we partner with mental health and juvenile court and families, and they have a team of people that work with them on, how can we assist the individual that's getting services from a variety of agencies to have success, and that's usually youth that are involved in that program. And then the roadside rest areas are Got Respite program that, we have 2 Saturdays a month here at Wiley, and families, it originated with families from Fast Track who got respite, and so we expanded it out a little bit, and so there's certain families that sign up and they bring their children here 2 Saturdays a month for 4 hours and give a little relief. And then, unfortunately, we get detoured every once in a while, and that's because of budgets, and we have to freeze everything and be dependent on our levy to pass, so that's kind of the sad news. And then there's people along the way on our journey. The SSAs are your chauffeur, so, we see that individuals who have funding and need a person-centered plan, the SSA, they tell them where they need to go, and the SSA has to put that plan together to get them there. And then we move that service on to our taxi driver, who's the provider of whatever that service is, that they're going to be able to get to, meet their goals and, fill in the things that they want in their life. Companions along the way might be our family support service, which helps family with up to $750 a year if they are eligible to receive that, just to maintain people within the home with a little extra respite or adaptive equipment, and that type of thing. And then our patrol or law enforcement, sometimes we do get in situations where, we need short-term residential placement for some people that are really high need. We also spend some time interacting with the court system, because we do have circumstances where, people can kind of get themselves into some not so good situations. And then the last thing on this is the EMT squad. When there's major things going on in crisis, we do have investigations within our department that we really review all those things and why they happened and what we need to do in the future to prevent them from occurring again. In fact, in the board packet this month, we saw a report for 6 months of
You're done.
You're done.
So anyway.
She drove that thing right over there.
So I know that was really quick, so I don't have any questions about any of those things, but that was enough to suit you for now.
That was a great analogy.
That was. I like that.
Yeah.
I think you should put that on YouTube.
That's going there because Rex and Bob got
That's kind of what we want to do it, yeah.
They can watch next, so.
I'll cut out the discussion about
Is there anything as far as, I mean, I hope you found that to be helpful, or if
Yes,
there's anything,
very much.
you know, we can answer more questions for you, but certainly, you know, respect your time, so. I thought these guys did a great
Oh,
job.
that's
Great
excellent.
job.
So,
I like how you guys do that. That's fun.
yeah.
Along the lifespan.
Yeah,
To sort of hear it all together and how it interacts, that's that whole.
And where the gaps are.
Yes.
We're kind of,
Uh-huh.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the dynamics are changing because of
Thank you, Slice, the smart board.
Didn't know you right with your mouth. Look at that, Harry.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh,
Right
right
on
on
your mouth,
the
man. You don't even have to go there.
The county board was working on these.
Everybody's not happy with that, I
And
understand.
when
I was like, looking at him like, I.
So let's just.
And one of the things that Sharon was saying was that they
like the
really
big
wanted to
old
make
patch
this
route.
so that families knew that it wasn't just your developmental disabilities, we're gonna take care of you all the way. It really kind of helps give you some other things that, just show you other partners that you can connect with. And one of the things I didn't say is like, you know, BCMH and, you know, there's all kinds of other different organizations, you know, Child Focus and
Right.
how you can kind of connect with some of those other things, so that you're not just, this is just the one place. And personally, I think that that's why going from early intervention into preschools, into your regular schools, gives people the opportunity of seeing that there's more out
There's
there.
there.
Yeah, and because I think people get scared, you know, I think when the kids probably were going to preschool here, this is what they knew, and this is where they wanted to stay. So I think that that has probably opened that up too.
Well, and to finish, just to finish, because I know the time, but I mean, the reality is, we're faced with is, you know, if we don't do that and we don't, we're not gonna have enough resource. I mean, we could pass umpteen levies and we're not gonna have enough resources if we're not promoting the fact that, you know, as much independence as we possibly can. And that's gonna look different for everybody along that life cycle, I mean, and different disability groups as well. But we just really have to be promoting that. And I think, you know, I think we're seeing more and more of that today with families where they're I mean, I think they recognize that, but it is a challenge. It's something that, you know, and it's a, you know, just advocating and trying to figure out systems, and I don't know, it's daunting. I mean, you know, I visited a family, you know, Jay and I visited, I mean, it's hard. I mean, it's a hard situation to, you know, figure out all these systems, and, you know, and she flat out looked, I mean, it was daunting. She looked at me and she said, "You don't have to do this every day." And I said, I don't have to, I mean, I don't have, you know, and it's hard to hear, you know, it's a hard thing to see, and you know, it really impacted me as far as how that went, so.
And I think it's hard from a parent point of view that Help Me Grow is so, and you felt like you're just supported and they're so intense, and then you're like, would this end? What?
Right, I know, it's
What?
scary.
What?
And we transition you into the preschool program and they don't, I mean, you're like there.
Yeah.
You don't get all that extra.
Right, you really have to seek it
Yeah.
out. You know, it's great that Help Me Grow does so much and kind of spoon feeds
Sure.
you as a parent too, because you're new to a diagnosis at that point, which is
Right.
a separate adjustment. But, you know, then you're kind of thrown out on your own, and I'm lucky in that the Down Syndrome Association is great, and I have a great, but I also have friends who have other DDs, and they're like, I didn't know about that, I don't know, you know,
Trying to figure out what the other resources are, it's tough.
and where to go.
That's why I was wondering, do we have anything online that, or something that people can just go to and they can see, oh, this is what happens next, and then next, and then next?
Well, I know we have like a resource bank in terms of that, but in terms, I don't know, we've put this out
this is
there,
on the resource
but,
page.
Okay.
yeah, but I think in terms of, you know, and I think this is a pretty useful tool for that. I mean, I have found it to be the most user-friendly tool that I've come across in terms of like when you're looking at it from the perspective of that you're mentioning there. But-
So they would have to know to go to the resource page, correct? I mean, sometimes.
Do you have a coordinator? Does Nora, who is 4.5 and not in Help Me Grow and not in intensive, does she have a coordinator?
No.
Okay.
No. So, Yeah, but if you have, typically, what we've typically done, if there are questions, we have, like, for Elizabeth, or, you know, someone,
Right.
if you're calling, you're gonna get somebody, and then we're gonna figure out where to get you next, kind of thing,
Mhm.
depending on what that looks like.
So when you say coordinator, did you mean an SSA?
Yeah, because at Helping Girl, they're not, what are they? They're
Service coordinator.
Yeah, they're service coordinators. So that's what I was used to from Helping Girl. you
Oh,
know,
okay.
Right, so I had a
Okay.
coordinator who kind of oversaw.
So everybody that
Now I get
has,
Kim. Yeah.
everybody that has an IEP meeting or an IP meeting does not have an SSA. So the ones that live at home with their parents, like your situation, they don't standardly have one in the beginning.
Well, what we do is, I guess I probably misspoke when I said no exactly. If they have a funding source, which, you know, they have to have their money allocated and all that coordinated, they do have an assigned SSA. All the other people who call and maybe have questions or just need some help with certain things, Elizabeth Moran, who's an SSA, kind of fills that role, you know, through the intake and referral piece. And she's actually, we're kind of changing our department, so she's going to have a few more people working with her that can also field some of those calls. And they're all SSAs, so technically, it's,
Okay.
you know, they help do the SSA function and kind of find the resources and advice.
But for a parent who's on a waiting list and doesn't have a funding source and have a child over 3, you're still kind of on your own, so.
Well, as Dan was saying, I think it is in
I
Kim,
think, yeah.
it's an area we probably need to address,
Mhm.
figure out a way to communicate.
Right, right, yeah, that's a good point.
Right, well, this was fantastic. This was
Okay,
exactly.
thank you.
Better than I thought I would get
Oh,
out.
well,
And Emily, maybe I'm wrong or whatever, but maybe there is a period of time where maybe parents and the children don't need anything during that period of time. You know, like you said, that you connect with, you know, the Downs Syndrome Association, and I know a lot of people are connected with the Autism Society, you know, and they have a lot of support systems and stuff like that built in there. But I think sometimes families, they do okay, and they don't necessarily need us, but then when they do need us, then they find us. And then I think then that's when Sharon's department, you know, gets involved or whatever, so.
I just have a couple friends, one neighbor in particular who has a son who's 5, and is just now getting diagnoses that are tough on her family. It's behavior type stuff that's emerging and getting more severe, and she's like, oh my gosh, what do I do now? I gotta help me grow, you know? She got an IEP form, but just like what services are there even out there? And
Sure.
that's where she's still in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think making that connection, and then we can try and figure out.
Because that means that, and when you get on the waiting list is important. I mean, Nora's diagnosis was birth, so I got on the waiting list when she was 6 weeks old. Well, you know, his diagnosis was age 5. You know, that I don't even know if it's on the list. I should tell him to get on, but, you know, so that's important too.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, guys.
All right, thank
So
you.
we'll be in
Thanks for
touch.
dinner.
And so, yeah.
Would you email us tomorrow afternoon, give us a
Yes,